Hello and welcome, my friends, to Men with Funny Heads, the sci-fi podcast that, if struck down, will become more powerful than you can possibly imagine. I am Wib, and I'm joined by my good friend, Longfang. How are you doing there, Longfang?
Hello, everyone. I'm alive and functioning in this overly warm and dystopian world.
Yeah, I don't want to put too fine a point on it, but if by the end of this podcast I am just making burbly sounds, that is because I have literally melted down into my constituent parts.
I will keep that in mind, and I will not hold it against you.
Because it's my flat is really fucking warm anyway, and the extra heat and having all the windows closed and not having a fan on me, ooh, this is gonna get rough.
Yeah.
But yes, apart from the heat, everything is fine here.
Totally fine. Everything is fine.
Yes. Sorry, it's been a long time since the last podcast, but sometimes that's just how it goes. Don't worry about it, because we've got a special fun thing for you for this time.
I spoke about it on a few of my own streams and on a Sniping Web stream at one point. Yeah, my mental health has been, fucked, and it's been difficult to do multiple things in a single day at times. Recording a podcast and streaming. And even when I'm totally fine or I should have a day when I'm free and I can just record a podcast, anxiety gets to you, and then you want to just curl up in a ball and somehow use that ball and spin to the point where the friction allows you to create a hole in the ground that you can then curl up in and stay there for months. So
An
yes,
advanced Sonic the Hedgehog technique, I see.
Yes.
But we are here now, and I'm very grateful, because I've been looking forward to doing another podcast with you. So.
Good, thank you.
But what are we doing this time, though? You should tell the lovely listeners what we're doing.
Oh, right. Well, the conceit of the podcast was that Webb decided to self-flagellate by creating a tournament bracket poll of the best Star Wars ships after the success of our Star Trek ships episode.
Yeah, people seem to really like that episode, and I listened back to it, and I was like, yeah, this is a good episode. And even though, in terms of raw number of episodes, it wasn't many episodes ago, in terms of physical time, it was quite a while ago, and I wanted to do it again. So.
Yeah.
But yeah, this time we have decided, what we did was we picked 64 ships from Star Wars. This ranges from fighters all the way to capital ships.
Mm-hmm.
And picking 64 from Star Wars is not complicated.
Actually, it was far easier than it was for picking Star Trek ships, honestly.
And yeah, if we'd have, I'll give the rules, because if we'd have not been quite so strict with these, then we could have definitely doubled that number.
Oh,
but also,
for sure.
I would have probably died trying to manage Twitter polls like this.
Yeah. This is the biggest I ever want to see us do Twitter poll kind of bracket things.
So, yeah, what we did was we selected 64 ships because, as ever, the democracy that we run on this podcast is one where you are given freedom to make whatever bad choices you want, but we give you the scope of freedom that you have.
You pick what you want, but we give you the options.
Yeah, it's basically like most real democracies.
Hey.
I made that joke last time as well, and it has not stopped being true. So
yeah.
But we had some rules with what ships we picked. Now, rule number 1 was that we only picked canon ships from TV and movies.
Yes.
So that meant there was no material that was solely from the new or old EU or video games, I guess. Which is why things like the Eclipse isn't in there, but also why stuff like Starhawks aren't in there, because the Starhawk has been in books.
They haven't
and it's been in video games
on screen yet, as far as I know.
Yeah.
Which sucks.
Yeah, but restricting it to TV and movies felt like that would be a nice, simple way to keep things tidy. And watch me find out now that there is some, oh, by the way, in the background of this one episode, a Starhawks in it.
Of Resistance? I doubt it.
Actually, is there now I'm thinking about it, is there a Starhawk in the big fleet in Rise of Skywalker? I don't remember there being
I mean,
one.
there's a ton of shit there, but I think we would have noticed a Starhawk, because they're kind of big.
They are, because I mean, they're made from bits of
Star Destroyers.
Anyway, the other rules were everything we say, unless stated otherwise, will be from the modern canon perspective, so not from the old EU, which which we'll refer to as Legends from here out, because that's the branding they use for it.
And I kind of like Legends rather than just EU. It lends it some like gravitas.
I think it's like it's kind of a nice way of separating it without just going new canon, old canon. You know?
Yeah.
It makes it the fact that there are two separate canons not be a big deal.
Yeah, I agree.
Rule number 3 was that ships with many different models under the same name, like, say, the X-Wing, will just have a single entry on our list, and we'll talk about different things within them if they come up.
For the sake of simplicity, that just makes life easier for all of us.
Yeah, so we thought that'd be the simple way of doing it. So, with all that said, would you like me to list every single ship that didn't make the list? That didn't get into our final?
That didn't make the finals.
Yeah, because the structure of what we're going to do is, like last time, is after we went through this ridiculous amount of Twitter polls, we ended up with a final 8, and those were the 8 that we were going to talk about. The bottom 4 are just in there in whatever order, because I couldn't be bothered to sort that out. And the last 4 are in a definitive order, and that's what we're going to talk about. I'm going to talk about those ones in detail. But all the ships that we put up for voting that didn't make it through, of which there are 56 of them, okay, they were the A-Wing, the U-Wing, the V-Wing, the N-1 Naboo Starfighter, the Z-95, the V-19 Torrent, the ARC 170, the TIE Advance X-1, the TIE Bomber, the TIE Brute, TIE Dagger, TIE Silencer, Super Star Destroyer, the Arca-10 class. I keep saying Arquitens.
Arquitens.
Arca-10 is apparently how it's supposed to be pronounced.
I'll still put the S in the end, fuck you.
Thank you to Big Boot Butch on Twitter, who told me, because they speak French.
Yes.
So they told me how to actually pronounce it.
Although, to be fair, sorry to interrupt your massive fucking list, but in some games I have played, they say Arquitens, and that just feels wrong in every way.
It's fine. Anyway, back onto the list. Resurgence class, the Supremacy, an Interdictor, Mandator 4, MC-75, MC-80, Eta 2, Delta 7, YT-1300, Nebulon B, CR-90, Lambda Shuttle, Omicron class shuttle, Luca Hulk, Vulture Bomber, Solus 1, Solar Sailor, MC-85, Star Fortress Bomber, Munificent class Star Frigate, Fire Spray 31, Gazanti, TIE Defender, VCX-100, that's the Ghost, Razor Crest, Scimitar, Providence class, Subjugator class, Consular class, Hammerhead Corvette, J-Type 327, a J-Type diplomatic barge. Those are 2 of the Naboo big shiny barges. Comruk fighter, which is the Mandalorian fighter.
Oh, yeah.
Acclamator, Republic attack shuttle, Upsilon class command shuttle, Night Buzzard, the Galleon, which is the ugly ship from Resistance, GR-75, YT-2400, Corona class, which is Hondo's big flying saucer, and the Quasar Fire class cruiser carrier.
Yes.
Yeah, that is all the ones that didn't make it through. If I remember rightly, the one that did the worst was the TIE Dagger. No one likes the TIE Dagger, we found that out.
Well, we both went, the TIE Dagger kind of sucks, but we should put it in there because, it is at least something that's in the movies, or in one movie.
Yeah.
No one likes it, apparently.
Yeah, and if your favourite ship is in there, so that we won't be talking about it in detail, we're sorry, but you can blame Twitter for not voting enough for them.
Blame democracy.
Blame democracy, because
the amount of people sending the Palpatine "I love democracy" gifs, it's so apt for this.
So we also had our own predictions of what we thought should win and what we thought would win. So what we, do you want to say what you thought should and would win?
I really thought it would be the YT-1300, the Falcon, because it's the fucking Falcon.
And that you had that down as both should and will.
Yeah, because if it's so iconic in terms of Star Wars, it's been in like everything bar the prequels and stuff like that. It's in terms of like the movies. I mean, it's.
I mean, technically, well, actually, Longfang, it was in the prequels, in the background.
Oh, God damn it!
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. But no, I get what you mean. It is such an iconic ship. It would not have surprised me. Would it have won? My one for what I would have liked to have won, because it was my favorite in all of those, was the Fire Spray Slave One.
Yeah, again, like super iconic ship. The Boba Fett effect was in full swing with that ship as well.
But what I thought would win was the Imperial Star Destroyer. Because, in my experience, people that, like, everyone has, like, their own ships that they really like.
Yeah.
Their own pet ships. They go, that's a really cool thing, that's a really cool thing. But people that like Star Destroyers really like Star Destroyers in my experience. So I was like, I'm going to go with that. Now, you might notice that of the three ships we mentioned there, the ones that we said should win both got knocked out in the first round.
Yep.
And the ones we said would win, well, we thought would win, only one of them got further. So, that shows how good we are at these things.
I expect people to vote with their heart, not with their lower brain, and I think people voted with their lower brain.
I don't know. I think it gets weird because, as ever, we never give a quantity by which to measure them.
No, that's totally fair.
So most people are going to be voting by what they think is just the coolest, and how they measure cool is up to them. And I kind of like doing it like that, because if we did it like which is the best looking or which is the best, that's a weird whole thing to go into. Yeah, whereas when we just say which one do you think is the best, I feel that leaves enough kind of wiggle room to kind of have things that may not necessarily do better do well.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I do have a couple of honourable mentions as well. Things that we didn't include in the list for whatever reason that I'd just like to have a brief mention of.
Sure.
One of which is the concept of uglies.
Yes.
Because I love uglies. If you are not familiar, uglies are ships in Star Wars that are basically kit bashers that are made from other ships. So, what is it?
The die wing comes to mind.
The die wing, which is that's the one that's a Y wing with the solar panels of a TIE fighter, or is that the TIE fighter's ball with the engines of a Y wing?
I don't remember off the top of my head, because I never remember the names. I just remember the designs, and they're all really fucking dumb and amazing.
But they're all supposed, most of them are supposed to be canonically absolute dog shit. And you will die if you try and fly them around.
I'm pretty sure there's one that's the cockpit, main body section of an AT-ST with, is it TIE Fighter solar panels on each side?
Yeah, there's all manner of weird ones. The Galleon from Resistance is kind of an ugly, but it's a big cruiser as opposed to, just a fighter, which most uglies are.
Yeah.
They are present in both new and old EU as well. The other ship I want to mention is the worst ship in all of Star Wars, the Sun Crusher, which is an EU thing. Mm-hmm. That was a thing that was... It wasn't as small as a fighter, but it wasn't that much bigger. And it could destroy suns and was able to take, a shot from a Death Star style super laser and survive.
Yep.
That level of stuff is already so ridiculously overpowered and silly.
It's the power creep issues you come into with any franchise that's lasted as long as Star Wars.
It's very my dinosaur can eat force field dogs.
Yeah.
But I think I would be able to swallow that pill if it wasn't the worst designed ship that exists.
It looks like an ice cream cone.
For people that are watching this on YouTube, I will be putting images up of some of the things that we talk about, especially for the main list. But there will be a Sun Crusher up, so if you don't know what it looks like, you can appreciate how terrible it is.
Yeah.
Because
it's silly.
I hate that ship so much. It's fucking worse.
Just... I'm not going to sit here and start bashing the EU, but like that's one of the ones where I'm like, yeah, that's why I'm not the biggest fan of the EU sometimes.
I have not read the things that it comes from, so maybe the stories are really good, but
yeah, maybe.
I don't know. But I know that I have a visceral reaction to it. When I first saw it, I'm like, that's the worst looking spaceship I think I've seen in anything. Like, you're making the Liberator from Blake 7 look graceful. What the fuck are you doing?
And it's technically flying backwards, for fuck's sake.
Yes, that is a ship that is actually flying backwards. But yeah, do you have any like ones you want to give it a special mention to?
Outside of... No, honestly, most of the stuff that we put in the poll is the stuff that I liked.
Yeah, yeah.
So nothing outside of that, although I feel that the Z95 Headhunter was robbed. As was the ARC 170, but that's just me. I don't know, I like those ships.
I get that. Oh, I did want to mention, just for our friend Elodie, who wanted us to give a special mention to the Naboo Starfighter.
Yes. It's a great design, honestly.
It's a good design, but it didn't get past the. I don't think I think it got past the first round, but it didn't get very far.
Yeah, the N1 Naboo Starfighter is it's a really nice, sleek design. It's very much like a sports car, which works so well for the aesthetic of Naboo. You know?
Yeah, I do like it, and also it fits in with the the kind of Naboo style of everything, and yeah. Is good. But yeah, shall we get into the list proper?
Oh, God save us. Yes, let's do that.
Okay, so our very first runner-up is the Y-Wing. So there. The Y-Wing, which is canonically called the BTL Y-Wing Starfighter, first appeared in A New Hope, or more accurately, first appeared on screen in A New Hope, because technically it appeared in the novel. It appeared in the adaptation of the movie that actually came out in 1976.
Ah, okay.
Because, yeah, normal. But yeah, we see it as fulfilling kind of a bomber role, and yeah, I don't think it's ever said in any of the movies what its name actually is, but it is shaped like a Y, so it makes it kind of easy to remember.
You know what? I think you may be right. Shit.
If I remember correctly, in the movies, in the original trilogy, I think only the X-Wing is actually mentioned by name at any point.
That wouldn't surprise me, honestly. Huh.
The rest of them are just there.
I've never thought of that before. But yeah, the Y-Wing, it's a fighter bomber. It's rad.
Yeah, it was. I will say, I'll go into the reasons why in a little bit, but I'm not going to have much to say about like the real world models and stuff like I did with the Star Trek stuff. Mm-hmm. So I'm mostly going to be talking about in canon things, just so the listener is aware. But yeah, these were originally commissioned during the Clone Wars, and so that means that the Rebel ones that we see are old and busted versions of them.
Yes.
And because they basically required quite a lot of maintenance, and so what they did was they stripped off the armor, because if you see the ones in the Clone Wars, they're like this nice sweeping design.
Yeah.
But they just took all that armor off them, so they're just left with the basic skeleton underneath, and then they just upped the power of the shields a bit to try and compensate for the fact that they're basically naked, which is a fun little thing. Funnily enough, actually,
like that, where it's the Rebels basically take surplus stuff and just make it work.
Yeah, it's kind of a fun kind of way of doing it. I'm not actually sure what their story was in the original canon. For the runners-up, I didn't go into quite as
That's totally fair.
Quite as much detail, because obviously it was quite a while before Y-Wings showed up in the Clone Wars, so I don't know if they were present, if they still had the same origins or what. But one fun thing is that you might notice in the Clone Wars they have a little ball turret on the back of the cockpit.
Yes.
The Clone Wars ones, the gunner. The Clone Wars have that, but the original models used in the original trilogy didn't. Do you want to know the reason why they are different?
Do tell.
It's because the clear dome that was originally going to be on the back didn't work with the blue screen technology very well.
Oh, fuck, that's great.
So that's why they put it back on when they made the Clone Wars versions of them. 'Cause that was what they were originally supposed to have anyway.
That is so good.
But yeah, I have a few little details like that, I will say, when I'm talking about the real world stuff.
Yeah, that's a nice little callback almost to behind the scenes. Like, I love it when they do that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously this was before green screen, so you know they were using the more primitive version of it. Do you actually know the reason why they changed it to green screen?
No.
They changed it to green screen because digital cameras, the sensor inside them that decides color is split into a grid, and half of them are green and the other half are red and blue. The reason being that human eyes are better at detecting different shades of green than red or blue. So they made it so the camera reflects at the preferences of what our eyes can do. When you want to replace a color within a thing, then it's better to use green because there's just a much wider swathe of green available.
Okay.
So, yeah, that's if I'm remembering it correctly. I might have got some tiny detail there wrong, but that's as far as I understand it, which I think is very interesting.
Yeah, that's wizardry, black magic, sorcery,
literal black magic. It's terrifying. But yeah, I'm a big fan of the Y-Wing. It's never one I put like in my favorite ships or anything, but I like especially the Rebel era version, like the Galactic Civil War version, because they just look so old and busted.
Yeah.
And like
out of the two, I think there's only two ships in A New Hope, Rebel like fighters you see in A New Hope. I prefer the Y-Wing, honestly.
I mean, you're right to be wrong, but you know.
Oh wow! Okay, fuck you. I just like how it's a big chonker.
I get that. Also, X-Wings are much more done, so you know.
True.
You see them everywhere, so you know. Y-Wings retain a little bit of being special because they don't show up anywhere near as much.
Yeah.
Actually, funny, speaking of that, the company that made them did start making them again after the fall of the Empire, but they made them in the style of the Rebel ones. And they actually sold them under the slogan of like the starfighter that broke the Empire's back.
Yeah,
that's why you see a very familiar looking Y-Wing in Rise of Skywalker. That's obviously a newer design, but is using the Rebel style.
Yeah.
Either that or that was the retcon decision after it got put into the movie because it was just something from a previous movie.
Don't worry about it. It's fine.
But don't worry about it. But yeah, you got anything you want to say about the Y-Wing? Because these are just the runners-up, so I don't have super detailed notes.
Outside of my thoughts on it being sort of one of my favourite Rebel fighter type thingamabobs, it's really fun to play as in squadrons.
It is a fun one. It's not as slow as the B-Wing if you want to go bomber.
Yeah. And I can do some dumb shit with it.
Man, that game's great.
Yeah, I need to go back and play it again. I was talking about this, it just made me want to go, wonder if there's any updates.
We'll go back
if I just stop talking halfway through this podcast, you know
it's
why?
You booted that up.
Yeah.
We'll play some games later on.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so the next runner-up was the TIE Fighter. The plane Simple TIE.
Yeah, I totally get why it made it that far. Although I thought it would have got into the last bracket.
Yeah, it's one of the most iconic ships in the entire franchise. So, yeah. Its full name...
It's the Screamy Boy.
It is the Screamy Boy. Its full name, for those wondering, is the TIE LN Space Superiority Fighter.
Yes.
And it's made by a company called Sinar Fleet Systems. It was cheap, quick, had no shields and no hyperdrive, but they had millions of them. And
also no life support, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, no, that's why you see them in the having to wear like the full flight suits. Because there's no if people, because obviously I expect a lot of the people who listen to this will know this kind of stuff, but just for people that aren't as sad,
if you are for whatever godforsaken reason listening to this just for our voices and not for the ships or something.
TIE actually stands for Twin Ion Engine, in case you're wondering. You mentioned about the scream that it makes. So do you know what the noise was actually made by? Like what it was taken from?
Okay, the worst part of this is I'm sure I used to know.
So the engine roar was created by sound designer Ben Burt by combining the sound of an elephant call with the sound of a car driving on wet cement.
The stuff that they got up to make sound effects in these movies is fucking insane.
It's great. That iconic roar in universe was apparently used sometimes as a psychological deterrent.
Yeah,
like they'd fly them low over populations because it was a scary noise to remind them of imperial might.
I'm not going to say that's a reference to anything, but like, oh boy, in World War II. Stuka bombers were used to that effect at times. They're the ones that made the screamy dive bomb sound.
Which side were they on?
They were on the Nazi side.
Yeah. Just Star Wars may occasionally have allegories to things. Fun thing actually. TIE fighters were originally supposed to be maroon in colour. They weren't supposed to be white. They weren't supposed to be like white or grey, depending on which
or
one. Or
blue if they were toys.
Yeah. They didn't. They didn't end up going with maroon because it blended in too much with space.
I was just thinking that it would blend in too much with a black background, and also it would look fucking weird.
Yeah, because obviously we have had red TIE fighters later. But when we've actually seen red TIE fighters, it's been in sort of the modern era where they don't use the same technology to make stuff, so it wouldn't be a problem. And they weren't sort of like a kind of deeper maroon colour.
Maroon's getting red. From the point from red to browny, and it's like, no. I think you'd lose a lot of definition on screen if you did that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. The red ties we see in like more modern things, or even just the EU, because like the Imperial Guard, like Praetorian Guard had red tie interceptors, if I remember correctly. But the First Order ties look nearly identical to the TIE fighters, apart from being black. But those ones do have basic shields. Most of them don't have hyperdrives, apart from the two-seater SF ones. Like the one that Finn and Poe steal. That's actually a special one, which is why it's got life support and
a turret.
And presumably had a hyperdrive.
Yeah.
So there are good reasons for that being like it is. You can tell those apart because they've got the red stripe down the side of the thing, which the regular First Order ties don't. But they're functionally the same. Although they're made by because Sinar Fleet Systems.
They joined up with another company or something?
They're Sinar Jamus, I think they're called.
Sinar Janus? Yeah, that sounds right.
I think it's Jamus, but I might be wrong there. I could check, but I'm not going to. Although, if speaking of like ties with shields, if you want a TIE variant, like a TIE fighter,
you were correct. You motherfucker.
Good.
Sinar Jamus, yes.
Good. But yeah, if you want an Imperial-era TIE fighter that does have shields, then there's the Mining Guild variants that you see in Rebels that do have shields. And also have the front panel of the solar panels removed.
Yeah, they've got like, a quarter cut out of them.
Yeah, so they can see better. But also it means that they are less energy efficient. Because, the big panels on the side are just solar panels.
Yeah.
They collect energy. So it works better. They are literally what they look like.
I'm just thinking here, you can cut out parts of those solar panels. It doesn't help when the cockpit window still sucks as much as it does.
Oh yeah, if you have played a TIE fighter in any flight game where it has a first-person perspective,
specifically,
you can't,
especially with a VR game.
Oh yeah, I've played VR Squadrons, and a TIE fighter. Like, you might as well not be playing it in VR. You're basically just looking through a porthole anyway.
Yup.
It's fantastic. But then, making sure that the TIE fighters were good, usable,
that was not the
pleasant.
Concern.
That was not the concern. Because, it was just, we want lots of them.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not basically going to put too much effort into making them survivable or anything. Like, they have an ejector seat, but TIE fighter pilots canonically didn't use them because all that meant was that they die slowly in space as opposed to getting blown up.
Yeah.
Because no one's going to come and find them, because it turns out the Empire, kind of a bunch of dicks.
Yeah. I would like to... Okay. Ideal world, I would like to think that the Rebels would pick up any pilots that actually ejected, because holy fuck, dying in space sucks.
I would imagine if it was like a fight that they won or didn't have to run away from at the end, which was quite common in at least on-screen depictions we see of like rebel
warfare is
all
often like really hit and run, so like
they kind of had to just do what they could.
Yeah.
But yeah, any other thoughts you have about the incredibly iconic TIE fighter?
I love how much they suck, honestly.
Yeah.
I love the design not being strictly aerodynamic. They're a fun, fancy spaceship.
That is true.
They're not a plane type shape. They're not a jet fighter type shape. They're just a fucking weird H.
Yeah, they're just such a weird design.
Yeah.
But you just kind of accept that as being a spaceship design.
Yeah. The beautiful thing about... or the great thing about people's imaginations when it comes to sci-fi or fantasy is you don't go, well, that's a weird design, that wouldn't work in real life. You just accept that works in that world and you enjoy it for that fact.
Mm. Oh, a fun little fact I just remembered about the TIE fighter. So in Rebels, because that whole series is stylized, the TIE fighters don't look quite the same as regular TIE fighters. And in some magazine somewhere, they stated that the TIE fighters that are manufactured on Lothal, which is the planet that a lot of Rebels is set around, that the TIE fighters there are a variant which have shorter solar panels. And that's why they look a bit different.
Which is an unneeded bit of depth, but also, okay, fine,
but until one of the people that was like one of the main people running the show came out and said, no, they're not. They're just regular TIE fighters.
Good.
I appreciate that. Oh shit, also, do you know the thing about TIE fighters and their and the reoccurring intentional error with their windows?
No.
So on the I can never remember which way around it is, but when you look on the outside of a TIE fighter, the brackets on the outside of it on the window itself mean that one of the poles is pointed straight up, but whenever it shows an internal view of it, there's two going straight up because it's been offset slightly.
Oh.
And that's just a mistake in the production of A New Hope. But they've kept it as like a running gag, so anytime you see the inside of one, they'll always do it wrong.
That's so good. Oh, very good. Fun. Very good. Love it.
So yeah, that's a thing. The next ship we have to talk about is another TIE variant. Because another one got through, which is my personal favourite TIE variant, which is the TIE Interceptor.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to be a controversial pick for your favourite TIE variant, I'm going to be honest.
Yeah, no. It's like... I don't know, it just like... It takes the TIE Fighter's weird gangly design and then just tries to refine it a bit, it feels.
It makes it look mean.
Yeah, it makes it look mean, and considering what it does, that it is just an improved TIE Fighter, that kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
So, canonically, it's called the TIE IN Interceptor, because TIE variants are all like TIE, like, slash a couple of letters.
LN, SF, whatever.
Yeah. And yeah, it's pretty much just a better TIE Fighter. I'm pretty sure the first time we see them is Return of the Jedi. I don't know if they turn up in, like, because I know they'd started to do some expanded universe stuff then, because I think, like Splinter of a Mind's Eye had already come out by then and things like that. God. Some of the really early...
Well, Splinter of the Mind's Eye came out before Empire did, I think.
Yeah, it did.
It's in a very interesting place with the canon.
Especially
considering Luke and Leia. Oh boy.
Oh yeah, the original books are like the most non-canon stuff. Like they were non-canon. Like I think Splinter of a Mind's Eye was canon for what, like a year.
yeah, it's one of those ones. When it comes to the Interceptor, though, like it has to be Return of the Jedi. The first time it turned up on screen because it wasn't an Empire.
Yeah, that was the first time it showed up on screen.
Yeah.
I know that much. Unless did it turn up in like the holiday special or something? I should stop thinking about this.
God damn it. Stop.
Anyway, the TIE Interceptor was a faster, more manoeuvrable version that had more guns, and its distinctive dagger-shaped wings actually allowed for a wider field of vision because it has those big notches out of them. So you can kind of look around. But again, TIE fighters and their field of vision is fucked anyway, but this at least mitigates it slightly, because when you look out of your incredibly small window, at least you've not got huge solar panels either side of that, covering up everything. It still didn't have a hyperdrive or shields, though. Because,
of course not.
Yeah.
Well, on that point of the hyperdrive thing is, the Empire were going with fleet-based tactics, so fighters were in support of big ships.
Yeah, and it also stopped defectors from getting away quite as easily.
Yeah. Unless they were in a TIE Advanced V1 like that one guy in Squadrons.
Like one guy.
I can't remember his name right now. Oh.
In Legends, interceptors were sometimes called squints.
I don't like that.
Do you know why?
Why?
Because TIE fighters were called eyeballs.
Oh, god damn it. That's awful.
Apparently, also in Legends, there's a bunch of conflicting stuff about the timeline of like how it was made and introduced, and the exact amount of guns that it has. So we're just going to ignore that.
I mean, as far as I know, it's 4.
It's 6.
Yeah. See, yeah.
Or 4, or 2.
Because 4 sounds right to me because they're at the ends of the solar collectors, but then also the original TIE fighters had the weapons below the cockpit.
Yeah, and you see the Chin guns firing in Return of the Jedi. So.
Yeah.
I believe the explanation that was come up with it in the old EU is that as a standard they're fitted with the 4 guns on the end of the wings. Mm-hmm. But sometimes they are fitted with extra guns on the chin because the mounts are still left there because they're just using standard TIE fighter parts.
Or they're they are TIE fighter ball cockpits retrofitted with TIE Interceptor parts.
Possibly. So
they have the cannons. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a whole thing.
It's always a whole thing.
Yeah, like I say, it's my personal favourite one. I think you generally see them in a slightly darker shade. They're in that kind of like blue-grey sort of colour usually. Which, is quite fun. The First Order had a couple of ships that look very, very similar to it.
Yeah, I vaguely remember Kylo Ren had a really weird one.
Yeah, he had one called the TIE Whisper.
That was it.
Which is the one he has in Rise of Skywalker. which is like a much more modified one. There's also the TIE Baron, which we see a red one of in Star Wars Resistance. That is it looks like a TIE Interceptor, but the wings don't have like the hard angles on them. It's actually like a curve.
Oh.
It's a cool looking ship, actually.
That's interesting. That's got some of the TIE Advance V1 sort of stuff going on then. Oh.
Yeah, it's actually I do quite like it. You don't see it much because Resistance is kind of a thing where there's interesting ideas happening and then they never do
explore
anything
with them. Yeah.
I really like the Star Wars animated series, but Resistance is the one I always tell people you can miss that.
Resistance is the weakest one, as far as I know.
It's the weakest one by a long margin. Like, it's no Rebels, it's no Clone Wars, and it's no Bad Batch.
Oh yeah, please no spoils in the comments about the Bad Batch.
Oh yeah, no spoilers for things. Also the other thing that the First Order has is the TIE Dagger, which is also kind of similar to a TIE Advance, but also not really.
Yeah, it sucks.
Yeah, it sucks and it's bad, and everyone hated it on the polls, so that's probably fine. But yeah, any further things to say about the TIE Advance?
TIE Interceptor.
TIE Interceptor, yes, that one.
Too many names. No, I think we covered it all, really. It's awesome. Cool.
Well, speaking of awesome ships, now we have the B-Wing, or the ASF-01 B-Wing Starfighter by Slain & Corporal, the best Star Wars starfighter. I'm not biased about that, shut up.
Also known as the Blade Wing.
Yes. Yeah, the B-Wing is that weird gangly thing you see in Return of the Jedi. And
with a gyroscopic cockpit.
With a gyroscopic cockpit and little S-foils that pop out. And you never see it do anything. But there is a really good reason you never see it do anything.
Is it because they couldn't work out how to make it do things in the filming?
Basically, yeah, because it's so thin from most angles, it was just really hard to like photograph it and get
with
it
like camera technology at the time, it would have looked not great, probably.
Yeah, so you don't actually see it do that much for that reason.
That's a shame.
Yeah, which is it makes sense though. Like, it's just such a weird and awkward looking ship that I've just always loved it.
Yeah,
it's so weird.
No, I fully understand your love for it.
Yeah, it's like intended as like a kind of blockade buster with heavier weapons than you usually see on starfighters. Yep. So it's not very good at like dogfighting.
It's not a dogfighter in the fucking slightest.
Yeah, it's supposed to take on like capital ships and things like that.
Or at least cruisers just be...
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's supposed to take on much larger things than itself and bomb the shit out of them.
Yes.
The B in it, as you said, in universe stands for Blade. But out of universe...
I know that's one.
Out of universe, there's a couple of different meanings for it. The A-Wing and B-Wing are called so because when they made new ships for Return of the Jedi, they were just like, okay, so we've got new Rebel Fighter A and new Rebel Fighter B. The A just happened to kind of look like an A, so that one made sense. And everyone was left going, why is the B-Wing called a B unless... You look at it from every angle and go like, there's no way you can think of this as looking like a B. There is no B here. But yeah, it was just because it was the other fighter, so that's why it really is called the B-Wing. Although most of the design work was done by a guy called Bill George. So they would also nicknamed Bill Wing fighters.
Yeah. I love that one. That's really just kind of adorable to me.
Which is great. By the way, its cockpit canonically can detach and has sublight engines, so it can use it as like an escape pod.
Yeah, I vaguely remember reading about that, yeah. Makes sense. Because there's no other way you're going to... you're not going to get anybody else in that ship to escape. It's like the cockpit's the only bit that even is sized for a person to be in. It's the weirdest fucking thing. And also, it had a turret at the other end as well, didn't it, originally?
I was just about to get to that, my friend.
Oh, I'm sorry.
The B6 prototype, which was the prototype version of it, had many features that were not seen on the final version. One of which was a secondary seat for a gunner at the other end, which in the episode of Rebels it shows up in you see being used. All the episode's called Wings of the Master. I did actually write that down. Oh. If you're interested in seeing that one.
It's a good episode.
Yeah, it is. It has a composite laser on that one as well. So, like, the Death Star's laser, where it's like several lasers come together to make one. The B-Wing there had that. So the guns at the end of its wings, the one at the big gun at the end of its tail, and it had one in the chin, all made a composite thing that could take out like a fucking cruiser, like in one shot. That was not in the final version either.
No. Although you could arm it like that in Squadrons.
Yes, and it was weird to use.
It was a bollock.
It was not good. I tried it a few times, but I ended up settling just for mounting every rocket and bomb conceivable into that thing.
Yeah, it works.
And, yeah, it worked out okay for me anyway. Yeah, there is also a Resistance era version of the ship that is a much more angular.
Yeah.
And just like the original B-Wings, you see do fuck all in Rise of Skywalker, where you see it as part of the Resistance fleet initially. I think the first thing that happens is some of them come out of hyperspace, and then one of them gets like instantly fucking blown up.
Oh, god damn it!
You do at least see one take a few shots at one of the guns underneath the Zeiston, I think they're called.
Zestian, something like that.
I've got it written down somewhere. But anyway, I think you see it fire. You see it take a few pot shots at that, but that's all you really see. But that fits because they didn't do much in the original appearance anyway.
Give them a chance, goddammit.
I can't really complain too much. You get to see one be the star of the show in that one episode of Rebels, so that works out fine for me. But yeah, they are my favorite fighter in Star Wars. You might notice that the fact that I said that and the one I wanted to win overall was Slave One, so you may notice that I have a bit of a thing for the slightly awkward ships that fly weird.
Yeah.
I don't know why. It's like any ship that flies strange, lands strange, or is asymmetrical, I just have a soft spot for.
Yeah.
Probably why I've always liked the Millennium Falcon. Like, I've just always loved the design of it. Yeah. I remember when I was a kid, I'd always used to get like kind of like low-key annoyed that everyone's like, this ship is a piece of junk, and I'm like, well, I like it.
Oh, bless.
But yeah. I think that's, apart from saying it's the best ship, and you are all fucking heathens for not having voted it to be the best ship. But you got it here, so I'm at least grateful of that, so I'll forgive you all.
You did get some time to try and talk to everyone about the majesty of the B-Wing.
I did. You let me talk about it and how much I love it. Yeah, it's just a fucking weird shit. But yeah, have you got any final things to say about that before we move on?
No, I think you covered everything, honestly. I need to go back and watch that episode of Rebels again, because it's really fucking good.
It is. Speaking of things that show up in animated series a lot, we are now getting on to our 4 finalists. So, in 4th place with, here we go, I forgot to have the page up that told me
it's
what
fine.
percentages
It's
were.
fine. Everything is fine, everyone. It's fine.
Okay, so, in 4th, with 22% of the votes, was the LAAT, the Little Republic dropship, a little gunship, whatever you want to call it, that was used throughout the Clone Wars. The LAAT, which stands for Low Altitude Assault Transport, but that, simply calling it an LAAT is actually several things, some of which look completely different. So the one we're specifically talking about is the LAAT-I, with the I standing for infantry, of which it could carry 30 of.
Yes. We had a fight about this, or not really a fight, a light debate about including this.
Yeah, because... So... straight up, it is a spaceship.
Yeah.
It is a starship. It can travel through space. It doesn't have a hyperdrive because that's not what it's for, but it can travel through space. But it's a dropship. It's used mostly to just drop people down onto a battlefield and used for in-atmosphere stuff 99% of the time. So it felt a little weird to include, but it also absolutely
it's an
can
icon
have a place.
of the Clone Wars.
Yeah, and obviously people were fine with it because they voted it into 4th place.
Yeah.
But yeah, I did feel it felt a bit strange to include it, but also there's no reason not to.
I just want you all to know that I fought for its inclusion.
So yeah, you can thank Longfang for the fact it ended up in there, because I probably would, if it was just me doing it on my own, I probably would have gone, it's more of in an atmosphere thing.
And you're totally correct in your like skepticism about putting it in, but at the same time, it's just fucking cool.
It is. I get that. I get that. So, and because this is part of the finalists, I have got more tedious in-canon information for it. So, the LAAT is 17.4 meters long and has a wingspan of 17 meters. It was made by Rothana Heavy Engineering, who were a subsidiary of Kuat Drive Yards. Kuat Drive Yards are the people who make things like, AT-ATs.
Star Destroyers as well.
And Star Destroyers, yeah. Rothana being a subsidiary, they did actually make a couple of other things for the clones. They made the Acclimators, not the Venators, weirdly, and ATTEs. They also made those.
The best walker, as far as I'm concerned.
I don't. That's one where I'm like, I don't agree, but I'm not going to fight you on it either. If you know what I mean.
Because I would crush you.
I'm like, I think I still do probably prefer the AT-AT, but
which is totally fair. But also, come on,
it is cool.
The TE's like a little bug. It's adorable.
It is cool, and I absolutely get it. And the version that some of the clones live on in Rebels is the version of that is much better than the AT-AT version.
Yeah.
Sorry, spoilers, but it came out literally years and years and years ago, and we're talking about.
Oh, don't! I don't want to think about how long ago that was. Oh God, I'm old. Oh no, oh no! We're both in our 30s and talking about fucking Star Wars and the internet. I hate this timeline.
Oh, you just wait till the next time I get you I get you on an episode to talk about a literal children's cartoon again. Not just this, where we can pretend some of it isn't meant explicitly for children, even though it's Star Wars, all of it is. But we can at least pretend here.
Yeah.
But I'll get you talking about Star Trek the animated series or something again.
Fuck off.
So a fun thing, I think this only happened in Legends, but clone troopers apparently called LAATs LAATs sometimes.
Makes sense.
Which is both the best and worst thing I ever read.
Would it surprise you to know that LAAT is also a firearms company that was involved in the First and Second World Wars?
It would, since I was not aware of that.
Yeah.
But this was LAAT with an R.
I know. I think it was. It just made me think of it there.
Yeah. The LAAT first appeared in Attack of the Clones, as far as I am aware. And yeah, it is inspired by. Okay, I've got the proper full name of it. It's the MIL Mi-24 Hind helicopter gunship.
A Hind D.
Yeah.
What's a Hind D doing in Alaska?
But yeah, that is the specific thing that it is based on.
Yeah, it's a yeah. That makes the most sense when I think about the cockpit and everything. It fulfills that sort of like Black Hawk role in the US Army, and I love it. Yeah,
it's also like it has a few. It has it's kind of weighed down with a shitload of different weapons.
Yeah,
because it's got like a couple of ball turrets on the wings. It's got a couple of big missile launcher, big missile launcher things on its back. Then it's got a couple of turrets on the nose, and then it's got the 2 ball turrets on the side where clone troopers are imprisoned inside the shame balls until they, I don't know...
They serve penance or die.
I assume it is a punishment, being locked inside those balls, because it's not like a ball gunner in like a World War II bomber where they can crawl into the main body.
No, they are on an arm and that's it.
Like, imagine if you were if you came down in that thing from orbit and you were just in one of those balls.
Mm-hmm. I do think they actually can go either inside or be like actually part of the superstructure though, so it's not too bad. But also, Jesus fucking Christ.
I don't think they are, because like to pull themselves in, they'd have to open the doors, and that would mean everyone inside it would die.
Oh no! I'm not talking about when they're like outside of the atmosphere. They do that, but I think that there's something about that. I remember reading somewhere years ago,
Okay.
But it could be completely wrong because.
I mean, a lot of them just don't have them as well.
Yeah, I think that's the reason why people kind of debate if they're like retractable or something. What was I going to say there? I don't know.
Personally, I think they look a lot better without the balls.
I agree. However, the first time you see them in Attack of the Clones, which I will still stand by and say is not a great movie until the Clone Wars fighting starts.
The middle, the like second act of that movie is basically unwatchable.
I agree.
I liked it a lot better than I did when I watched it when I was younger, because I watched them again recently. But man, that is... Oof, that movie's rough.
yeah. When the first gunship comes down and lands and every gun is firing and the turrets are picking up, it's the best.
Oh yeah, speaking of the composite laser thing earlier from the B-Wing, the shame balls, the punishment spheres.
Yeah, they're little composite lasers as well, aren't they?
They are little composite lasers, yeah.
Yes, because they've got a little dish. They're like a fucking 50s ray gun, I love it.
There is a lot of 50s ray gun aesthetics in the in Attack of the Clones, especially in the like Separatist army.
Yeah, even like the fucking clone helmets with the fin on it. That's very of that time as well with car design.
They look like the Rocketeer.
Yes, they do. Lucas didn't have a hand in the Rocketeer, did he?
I don't know. But I'm looking because I'm like thinking about it and going, oh, that wouldn't surprise me if he did. He doesn't appear to.
It was made by ILM.
Okay, well, I mean, yeah, but ILM are to do with like basically every movie after they got made.
You are correct, but like,
Huh. Anyway, that tangent aside,
Rocketeer's a fun movie. You should watch it. It's really dumb and cheesy.
I've not seen it in a long time. I should probably watch it again. I remember seeing it as a kid. One thing.
Also, the mafia fights the Nazis in it.
Cool. Okay, yeah, I want to see that now. Or rewatch it. So one thing that you might have noticed on LAATs is that a lot of them have nose art.
Yes.
Painted on them. Possibly
Please don't talk about the Padme one. Please don't talk about the Padme one.
I think the most well-known one is... I forget what that one was actually called, but it's the one that was in Clone Wars, the cartoon, not the Clone Wars, the original.
What was the design on the one that you're thinking of?
Which has a big snarling rancor mouth on it.
Oh, no, I don't know that one.
So it looks like the big mouths they'd put on things like an A-10 plane.
Mm-hmm. Or
it looks like
a P-51 Mustang or something like that in the Second World War.
Yeah, those kind of like angry faces. That's probably the most popular, like the most well-known one, because they made toys of that one and everything.
Yeah,
and
however, I know
there is
at least two off the top of my head.
There's a ton of them that they added, and nice high-res reproductions of the nose art does exist online, which is great. So I did write down some examples and what they are, because they never draw attention to them, but if you're watching the Clone Wars and there's an LAAT on screen, especially as the show goes on, look for this nose art. Because
also, if it has any Aurebesh, the writing and language of Star Wars, like the common writing, see if you can find a translation of it, because usually it's amazing. I'm sure that one's going to come up in this.
Well, I wrote down 4 of them.
Okay.
Which is One of them, which is called the Lucky Leku,
Yes.
which has a female Twi'lek in clone trooper armor.
Twi'lek.
Yeah, and if you're not familiar, a Leku that's what a Twi'lek's head tentacles are called.
Yep.
There's another one called Bantha Poodoo.
Oh,
which is
I didn't remember that one.
Which is basically like calling your plane bullshit, and the icon, the little art on it, is a bantha with comedically small wings dropping bombs.
Good. I love it.
There is Dooku Boot, which has a clone trooper boot kicking Count Dooku up the arse.
Good.
And my personal favourite, Plo's Bros.
That's the one.
Which has a picture of Plo Koon and a couple of clone troopers.
Yeah, it's Commander Wolf's squad, LAAT, I think.
The Wolf Pack.
The Wolf Pack, that's the one.
And Master Plo Koon, the Jedi Knight. Yeah, when I was looking through them and I noticed it, and then I think I watched, because I've been rewatching the Clone Wars recently, and I actually saw this one in the show, and I was like, that's Plo's Bros.
Yeah,
fuck yeah.
For those that don't know, the Aurebesh on it actually translates to Plo's Bros.
Yeah.
And the reason that they have so much wolf iconography is Dave Filoni is a huge fan of Master Plo Koon and is also a big fan of wolves.
I didn't actually know that.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's why when Dave Filoni himself appears in The Mandalorian, his character's name has wolf in it. The one that you didn't mention that springs to mind is the Crumb Bomber.
Yes, it's got Salacious Crumb on it.
It's got a Kowakian monkey lizard. It's Salacious Crumb.
But yeah, the nose art is great, and it's. I like that they don't draw attention to it. It's just a thing for you to notice.
Yeah, that actually one of the there's one episode I remember reading about behind the scenes stuff. There was going to be a point where Anakin sees one with Padme pin-up art on it, and I'm kind of glad they didn't do that, because I think it's better they don't actually zoom in and highlight what the clones have done to customize their ships like that. Yeah.
Actually, speaking with the LAATs, there are a couple of variants of the LAAT that are because obviously there are other things that are called the LAAT that aren't that same thing. Like there's the ones again, they show up a bunch in Rebels, which are the ones that have kind of like TIE fighter style.
Yeah, that's the Empire's like new version of the same thing, basically.
Yeah, which they're also called LAATs, but they're not the same thing at all. But there is ones like the LAAT-C, which is the one that you see dropping down ATTs.
Yes, the one that's basically got the big cutout in it to hold walkers.
Yeah.
Rad.
It's literally the exact same thing as for the 40k fans listening as the Thunderhawks that have the bits missing so they can drop rhinos onto the battlefield. Yeah. It's literally the same thing.
Yeah, it's the same idea. And it's great and it's perfect, and if you think differently, I will fight you.
Fair. I believe those also have a longer wingspan as well.
I think they are slightly, their dimensions are slightly changed. Like it might have a slightly longer body and wings or something, but yeah.
But yeah, these things obviously show up like a ton in the Clone Wars, because they're the primary mode of transport in atmosphere and to get from orbit to atmosphere for clones. So, they show up a lot. Any last things to say about them?
Oh, they have a really amazing engine sound.
They do have a fun engine sound, yeah.
Yeah. Just came to mind there as we're finishing up. Yeah, engine sounds rad as hell.
I mean, that's the thing with Star Wars in general. Like, just for any faults that I may be able to pick with it as like a franchise, the one thing it's always nailed is like sound design.
Agreed.
So many ships purely by like their engine whine, and I've said this before. Like, the fact that you can quite often tell what company made a ship purely by how its engine sounds.
Yeah.
Like the amount of times I'll see something, you'll hear something, and you go, "Oh, that must be a Corellian ship," because their engines all have that kind of whine to it. Mm-hmm. And then I look it up, and it's like, "Oh yeah, it's made by like a Corellian subsidiary." Like, okay.
Yeah.
Which
also because we're huge fucking nerds, Web.
There is that too, and then you've got shit like Sebulba's Pod Racer and the thunking
like fucking diesel transit that needs a fucking check up, like chug 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 chug. Oh, great!
And then Anakin's pod racer that sounds exactly
Just
like
an
a
F1
Formula
car.
One. Which, and like, because I remember seeing it, because I'm sure I have talked about this. It might have been on a stream sometime with you. About like I used to go to Formula One races a lot. Like I used to go to the British Grand Prix each year, and so I'm keenly familiar with how Formula One cars not only sound, but how they sound when you're physically in the presence of them, and like how they sound when they're far away from you, because the noise of those engines travels like you wouldn't believe. Like you cannot appreciate how much that noise travels unless you've been in the presence of them. And so hearing the exact sound of how that noise trails off into the distance as it like reverberates around, and hearing that on Anakin's pod racer, I was like, thank you, that was a gift for me. Thank you, George.
No, that was a gift for George.
Oh yeah, that was because George was just like, no, this thing is going to be 8
You are
minutes
not
long.
cutting any of this out of the movie. Fuck you.
Normally, I disagree with all of George's decisions about what to include and what to cut, but that was the one time when he was 100% correct.
Yeah. Yeah, honestly,
God bless him. Strange man that he is. But yeah, we should stop talking about pod races and talk about starships.
Fine.
So, I realised I never said. God, I'm a fucking. I'm a professional. I never did say what the amount of votes that the.
Oh yeah.
Oh no, I did say the LAAT. I thought we'd move on to something else. I'm very bad at this.
It's
now
the
we're moving
heat,
on to,
everyone. It's the heat.
It's the heat. We're moving on to the next thing now, though, which is the Venator class Star Destroyer. Another thing from the Clone Wars, and that got 22.2% of the votes.
Hey.
So it just edged out the LAAT.
Hey chat, just between you and me here, it's the best Star Destroyer.
Yeah, I can. Again, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I personally like that one the best, but I totally 100% understand and respect that decision, like that choice you've made.
Fucking look at it. It's a more refined version of the Star Destroyer. It's a little bit sleeker. It's got the twin bridge design. It's got the hangar deck thing that you'll talk about in a minute, and I don't want to steal your thunder about. It's rad as shit. Also, it has red on it.
But it does have red on it.
Yeah.
And that means it goes faster.
No, it just means it's got a nice highlight colour, you fucking weirdo.
It does. Those ones look a lot better than the later Empire ones. But yeah, the Venator class Star Destroyer, which is often referred to as just the Jedi cruiser because of it being, the ships that were mostly used during the Clone Wars by the Jedi and their clone troopers. It was made by Kuat Drive Yards and is over 1 kilometre long. So that's a thing.
Yep.
It was used throughout the Clone Wars by the Grand Army of the Republic, but remained in use for quite a while afterwards as well. So the Empire used them before replacing them with Imperial-class Star Destroyers. Although, as we mentioned a minute ago, the Imperial ones lost their nice red paint scheme and were just boring grey.
It's almost like the Empire sucks or something.
Yeah, they just suck because they repaint the Venators. That's the only reason.
I was more thinking about the sudden lack of colour and joy and light. Okay, never mind.
There is technically a Venator 1 and a Venator 2 class. But don't ask me to tell you what the difference is because I don't know or care.
Is it that gun turret at the hangar that I was telling you about?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I believe it's... When I checked on Wikipedia, I don't... If I remember correctly, neither actually said what the real difference was. I believe it's actually mostly to do with the hangar bays.
Oh, it might be actually, yeah. That rings a bell in my brain.
But yeah, these things if you're ever wondering how bad to feel when you see one of these blown up in like the Clone Wars, they had over 7,000 personnel on board and could hold over 2,000 troops on top of that.
Yep.
Bearing in mind, most of the personnel would have been clone troopers as well, I would assume, because most things were just stocked with clones. The thing is most notable for its huge ass hangar that runs down the middle of the ship. that opens up with a big door, and there's just a huge hole left, and you can see all the hangars inside. It's really cool.
It's the best. It's such a cool design because it gives that aircraft carrier feel to the universe.
Yeah, absolutely. It basically shows that there is a way to design a carrier in Star Wars that isn't a crap design like the Quasar Fire.
Yep.
Because that's a ship that someone started designing, and then halfway through, they had a coffee break and then got distracted and just didn't finish.
And then they decided to call the thing the fucking Quasar Fire.
Yeah. It just needs a little something on the top or the sides of it just to give it something.
It's a carrier. It doesn't need anything. I think that's maybe the design philosophy behind it. It's literally there just to be a carrier. Fuck you.
It doesn't even look, but it's not even like, most of its space is wasted because it doesn't. The actual hangar parts of it are like a relatively like small part of the back of that ship.
Shut up.
I hate it. However, the Venator is that but better, and it could hold up to 420 fighters, which is absurd, but that is apparently how many it could hold. And yeah, as you mentioned, it has 2 bridges. Do you know what those bridges do?
Oh, one's command of the ship, and the other one's fighter command.
It is. Do you know which way around they are?
The one on the right's fighter command, I think.
Yeah, it's starboard is primary command, and port is starfighter.
There you go.
Yeah, so there you go. If you've ever wondered that, I worry for you, but also now you know. Yeah, it first appeared in Revenge of the Sith because the big landers you see in Attack of the Clones were acclimators, which is very, very similar. The Venator was first named in the novel Tarkin, by the way.
Oh. Okay.
So yeah, because obviously they don't really tend to get named. A lot of things don't tend to get named in like shows very often.
Shows or movies, yeah. It tends to be when the toy line comes out, you find out.
Quite often.
Or the cross-section books.
Except for the clone turbo tank, which is actually called the Juggernaut. But I heard it I heard a thing the other day. The reason why they couldn't call the toy the Juggernaut is because some other company had the rights to make toys called or action figures with the name Juggernaut on them because they had the rights for the X-Men at the time. So they started calling it the Clone Turbo Tank.
I'm fine with that. And the Juggernaut, actually, if you want to very quickly have a sidebar, is a design that's been around for a very long time behind the scenes.
Yeah, it was originally done for Empire Strikes Back, wasn't it?
Yeah. It was one of the planned... Yeah, it was before they had the idea for the walkers. It was going to be those Juggernauts.
Again, I think that was a good decision.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't think the AT-AT scene would be as memorable or fun if they weren't walkers. I mean, obviously they would have had to destroy them in a different way because you can't exactly trip up something with 10 wheels. But, yeah. Oh, by the way, do you know what Venator actually means?
No, come to think of it.
It means hunter in Latin.
Oh.
So that's
very nice.
Thing.
Very nice. And it has an arrowhead shape, actually.
Yeah.
With the cutouts in the side for hangar base. Yeah, okay, that's really good, actually.
Yeah, it's a fun name for a very cool design of a ship, and I really like it from like a design point of view because it is both its own thing, but it is unmistakably in the lineage of a Star Destroyer. Yeah. And the fact that we see most of it in the hands of the good guys, quote unquote.
There's a lot of nuance there, don't get it started.
When you're talking about the Clone Wars, like...
Everyone's a bastard in the Clone Wars.
Like... Even the good guys are still fighting on a side that has been manipulated into fighting a nonsense war.
Yep.
And no one looks good.
The prequel movies, the prequel movies have great ideas, just not great execution. Everyone.
Yeah. Basically, I think the only people that come out of it looking remotely good are like the clones. Like
yeah.
Because they're like the ones who had no fucking choice in the matter. But seeing it as this the good guys roaming around in what is obviously a Star Destroyer, And just that it like is a nice visual cue to what's coming up. It's a bit like, how the clones are look like stormtroopers. It's the same kind of thing, of that you've got this permanent little visual reminder
of what's
going to happen.
Yeah.
Which is just a really cool little way of integrating that.
Yeah, I agree.
And actually, if you want the most bizarre fact that I came across when looking up the Venator, it is that its engine room is based on the gravity control system from the SDF-1 Macross, from the first Macross series.
Jesus Christ, that's some esoteric shit.
Yeah, which I don't know shit about Macross.
Yeah, I'm not an anime guy, really. So yeah, but that's awesome.
But yeah, I don't really know anything about Macross, but I looked up what the SDF-1 Macross was, and it's like, oh, that's like a fucking capital ship that turns into a robot. Cool.
That sounds about right.
Because I knew the little fighter ones that turn into like little bipedal robots. I was familiar with those, but I wasn't aware that there was also giant ones. So consider me learned about one aspect of Macross.
And his love of giant robots continues.
I mean, yeah, I'm not gonna cast like any kind of like shade on a series for including giant transforming robots. I wouldn't. Far be it from me.
You're
to
the one
that
that watched that fucking train anime.
You mean the anime about
The
trains?
Shinkansen.
Bullet trains that transform into robots, and had Hatsune Miku as a mech pilot, and Godzilla showed up,
and Godzilla,
and multiple characters from Evangelion showed up, including an EVA 1 train. That arrives and then transforms while the fucking Evangelion like theme tune plays.
Cruel Angel's Thesis, yeah.
And I was like fucking cheering and whooping like when that was happening. I was like, fuck man, this is so terrible. I love it. It is one of the single most incomprehensible things I've watched, because it's like it was the movie for a series.
Yeah.
And I hadn't seen the series, so I'm not going to sit down and watch 40 episodes of a transforming train anime out of nowhere, but I will watch a movie.
Yep.
Yeah. I tell you what the name of it was, but it's got a really, really long name.
All I remember is that Shinkansen was in there.
Yeah. If you look for transforming train anime, you'll find it.
Yep.
But yeah, Venator's cool, I guess.
Venator's
the point
very
of all
cool,
that.
yes.
So we should move on to the next one, which is one that I don't think will surprise absolutely anybody, which is the classic X-Wing.
Yeah. I mean, what can you even say?
Yeah, that got 26.1% of the votes, and I honestly can't blame anyone for that. It is a classic design. It's been there since the beginning, and yeah. It is what it is. Mm-hmm. Canonically, they were made by Incom Corporation, later Incom Frytech, and there were many, many different models. The Rebel ones that we see are usually T-65Bs. The Resistance ones you see are T-70s, and the New Republic models that you occasionally see are T-85s.
Yeah.
Now, that gets way more complicated if you look at it from Legends, because if I remember correctly, some of the X-Wings are T-65s and some are T-65Bs, but we will just put a line underneath that and just say that, as per new canon,
the
Rebel ones you see...
talk about the Stealth X?
We are not talking about the Stealth X. That is a Legends thing, and we are not talking about the Stealth X. All X-Wings are broadly the same thing, being... a ship with like a big pointy fuselage and 4 wings with a laser cannon at the end of each of them, and the wings separate into the X shape that gets them their name.
Indeed.
The T-65B was 13.4 meters long with an 11.76 meter wide wingspan, and it cost 150,000 Imperial credits. Or you can get a used one for 65,000. So that's a bargain, isn't it?
Yeah, totally. I guess.
By the way, due to like things like the West End Games RPG, there's like prices for pretty much everything from the old canon, like for how much it costs to buy. I think this is the only one I noted it down for, just so I can make you aware that that's a fact. That's, like there's like...
I love the idea of like a fucking used Starfighter dealership though, with like a really dodgy dude trying to sell you a used T-65B. Like, slaps bonnet, cannon falls off.
It's like, well, now it's more of a, I don't know, a Y-wing? No, that's already a thing. Canonically, it's descended from the design of the Z95 Headhunter and the ARC-170.
Yes.
Both of which were also made by Incom Corporation.
And both are fucking rad.
It was originally designed for the Empire, but after building a bunch, that project was sidelined for the TIE Fighter line of ships.
Let me guess, the X-Wing was more expensive than they wanted.
I believe that is the reason, yes.
Yeah.
And so, they ended up being used by the Rebellion, I believe partly out of spite.
Yeah. And Com's like, fuck these guys.
Which is funny, because it was originally designed for the Empire, and then later on, I don't think I mentioned this, but the TIE Interceptor was made to combat the X-Wing, because X-Wings were so good at killing TIE fighters.
They are. There's less X-Wings, but by fuck, they're good quality compared to TIEs.
Because they have a shield, they have a hyperdrive. They have a decent hyperdrive as well, because hyperdrives in Star Wars come in classes. I think, like... So, for example, I think a Star Destroyers, those kind of big ships, they have a Class 2 hyperdrive. Things like X-Wings have a Class 1 hyperdrive, which is faster, and something like the Falcon has a 0.5 hyperdrive.
Yeah, because
the lower the number, the faster.
Han never stopped tweaking the fucking thing.
Yeah. There was you probably noticed it because obviously it's in the movie, but there was a full-size one made for A New Hope. And obviously other ones were built for later movies, like the one that Poe has. Yep. Full-size ones that were built. So.
And there are full-size ones at Galaxy's Edge.
Yes. As I mentioned earlier, it's one of the few starfighters to actually be mentioned by name in the original trilogy. Because they say things like TIE Fighter, but I don't think they mention the name of any of the other Rebellion fighters. So the X-Wing's the only one they actually say. Oh,
do you want to tell the nice people how Luke was able to get the hang of the controls of the X-Wing so quickly?
Oh, it's because he was used to flying a T-16, which is the Skyhopper, which was also made by Incom, so they had similar controls. If that's the
because
reason.
We all needed to actually know that and not just be like, okay, that's fine.
He's the protagonist. He can just fly. It's fine. He says he's a pilot. We don't need to know any more than that.
Yeah. Hell, fucking Biggs, good old Biggs, said he's the best bush pilot, the best bush pilot he's ever known, or something.
Yeah. But in Legends, the X-Wing was eventually replaced with the E-Wing, but E-Wings suck. So X-Wing stuck around.
Yeah.
E-Wings E-Wings are fine. If you're not familiar with an E-Wing, go look one up. They look terrible. But I think they'd be fine if they didn't have the little gun on top.
Yeah.
If they
look a bit too Battlestar Galactica to me.
I actually get that. I actually find that to be a problem with a lot of the
expanded universe stuff.
Expanded universe stuff from like the 80s and 90s.
Unless it's KOTOR. I mean, that's not 80s and 90s, mind you, I apologise. But KOTOR at least had its own design language. Yeah.
Shit, I remember that was the other rule I meant to mention in the introduction. God, I'm on fire today.
Oh, yeah. Literally, it's too hot.
We didn't pick anything from the Old Republic. Because that is its whole other thing by itself. And honestly, the design language in that is so different that it feels weird to include them.
Yeah, and we don't mean that in a bad way. It's just it feels like they went in and went, okay, we need to recreate the Star Wars universe without ever having seen Star Wars kind of thing.
Yeah, everything in it feels like it was designed by people that had never seen Star Wars, but they had someone who really knew Star Wars describing things to them.
Yeah, and it gives it this totally different life.
Yeah, and I say that as a wholly positive thing. Like, that is not a negative. I actually think it's really cool. But it does mean it's a whole other thing, and we thought it was best not to include it. Plus, where does the Old Republic sit canonically these days? Is it canon? Is it Legends?
Grey-ish, because Revan exists and we know that. So the Old Republic thus must exist, just maybe not in the form that we saw in KOTOR.
Okay.
Although they are doing another KOTOR game, so maybe we'll get that answered.
Yeah, I would be interested. But yeah, what I was saying was like a lot of the especially like the RPG West End game series stuff.
Yeah.
Like a lot of ships that were designed for that, they have a design aesthetic to them that feels is like very generic sci-fi and doesn't, to me anyway, doesn't have the flair of Star Wars. So I tend not to like many of the designs from it.
There's something about the designs for Star Wars, and it might just be how grounded they feel compared to a lot of other sci-fi shows that lends them this extra touch.
Yeah, and I just found a lot of the ships designed for that era, unless they were heavily based on an existing ship, I'm not a big fan of them, but the TIE Defender, I think, comes from that era.
Yeah.
I think, I think they were originally in a video game, but it was, from that
era.
I
don't know, Thrawn has a hand, I don't fucking know. Also, the Z95 comes from that era as well, I think.
And some of them look fun, but that's obviously because they're so heavily based in, like, the designs of existing ships. But in short, the E-Wing sucks, and so I understand why, even canonically, they were like, no, we should just keep the X-Wing, because the X-Wings are better.
Hey, at least you don't have us talking about a fucking K-Wing.
I don't want to ever talk about it.
It's called that because the designer was on ketamine at the time. Anyway.
I know some people really like the K-Wing, but again, that's very much from that era, and it just doesn't really feel like a Star Wars ship to me, and it's also really messy, and I don't like it.
Yeah. Anyway.
One of the most notable things about the X-Wing is, of course, the wings that separate into the X.
The S-foils.
The S-foils. Now, there are numerous reasons for things doing that on ships in Star Wars. For in-atmosphere stability, to prevent overheating, to increase weapon spread.
I think the X-Wing's a bit of both with the weapon spread and heating, right?
Yeah, I can't remember exactly offhand why this one in particular does.
I know the ARCs... The ARC 170's S-foils is for heat dissipation.
Do you know what it actually stands for, S-foils?
Stabilizer?
Okay. I'm asking a trick question here.
It doesn't mean anything.
In current canon, it means strike foils.
Okay, makes sense.
In Legends, it meant either strike, stability, stabilizer, or star, depending on the book.
Star?
Yeah. Starfoils.
Lock star foils in attack position. What?
Yeah. Which is quite fun. Also, so you know how the X-Wings that were originally introduced to in A New Hope were Red Squadron, but originally they were going to be Blue Squadron.
Huh.
But that was another one that was changed because they were doing it on a blue screen. And that
of course. Right, yes, of course.
I believe there's also something to do with that with the Y-Wings. I can't remember what colour they were supposed to be, but I think that was changed for the same reason. It just didn't show up well. However, in the novelisation I mentioned earlier of the original movie from 1976, the novelisation, not the movie, that's from 77, but it does still call them Blue Squadron in that original adaptation.
Because they'll probably be working on older scripts and stuff.
Yeah, they would have been working on like a pre-production script so that they could get the script out. The book out.
The book out, yeah.
Yeah. Actually, speaking about the real world things, because like I said, I haven't actually been able to talk about the real world stuff very often.
Yeah.
And like of the original X-Wing models, do you know how many of them have survived to this day?
I would imagine not that many, because, if we're talking about the stuff that was in A New Hope, that would have been made in a budget, and I don't know if it would have survived all that well.
The only one that has survived is Red 3, which is Biggs's. ship.
Huh.
That's the only one that is complete. Only the wings of Luke's
Red
actually
5.
survive. Yeah, they're the only ones that survive. Which
Red
is,
5's the most famous one as well. That's a shame.
Yeah. I'll get there's some things later on I'll mention about why this is the case.
Okay.
But yeah, another fun thing, like going back to like the original stuff, is that the T-70, the version that's in the Resistance era, the sequel trilogy stuff, that resembles the concept art that Ralph McQuarrie did.
Macquarie did, yeah.
Yeah.
I like that design a lot with the cutouts and the wings and stuff. It's really nice.
Like the way the engines are sort of like a round thing split down the middle.
Yeah.
That's from that original design. Although apparently that's a complete accident. The fact they look similar is just they got some people to do a fancier design of the X-Wing and they just inadvertently...
It's almost like Macquarie had his fucking eyes in and he was really good at what he did.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's fun.
Unless we're talking about his concept art of Chewie, that's... Oh boy.
Hey, come on, that became the LAAT, it's fine.
I know. It's just a face that makes it look like he's going all the time. Sorry. Anyway,
it's fine. But yeah, I like the X-Wing a lot. I don't think I'd ever say it's like one of my favorite ships or anything.
Yeah.
Because I think it's just because
it's a fucking stalwart. It's just there and it's amazing, but it's not my favorite.
It's just big. I think it's mostly just because we see it so much.
Yeah.
So I know, like, you know, a lot of people are probably kind of the same, where you get the things you get a soft spot for tend to be the ones you don't see very often, and the ones that are there the whole time. You're not always necessarily going to be your favorite, you know.
No, but
I still like them.
Gotta respect them.
And I am forever entertained when like one shows up in something new, because again, the distinctive engine whine of them.
Yeah, I can think of one thing specifically recently. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. But so yeah, any final things to say on the X-Wing?
I think we covered it on that one. It's just an icon. It's a lot like the TIE Fighter as well. The two of them are very much like they've been there since the beginning, you know?
Yeah, they're just part of the visual language of Star Wars at this point. Okay. So, we are down to the very last one.
Yes.
The thing that won with a grand total of 29.6% of the votes.
Yep.
Again, don't point out that the percentages there are off by 0.1%, because Twitter polls always do this.
Yes, they do.
The winner of our democratically selected best ships in Star Wars is the Imperial Star Destroyer, which also means I win too, because that was the one I guessed.
I love democracy. Yeah, you got it. Good job.
But yeah, so the Imperial class Star Destroyer is the Star Destroyer that you think of when someone says Star Destroyer. Like the Venator before it, it was made by Kuat Drive Yards and was 1,600 meters long. So, you know, 1.5 kilometers long. Yeah. Which is a bit much, but that's what it is.
Symbols of power and strength, etc., etc.
Oh, yeah. So during the design process, they were originally going to be called the Imperator class, which is a thing that was later canonized when they stated that that was actually the original name they had when they were being designed during the Republic era, and then they were later renamed to the Imperial class after the rise of the Empire.
Interesting. That's a really cool little tidbit. Good work.
Yeah, and if you want to know the fact about Imperial Star Destroyers that will make you the most fun at parties.
Oh no.
Is that there are two versions of an Imperial Star Destroyer, an Imperial Class 1 and an Imperial Class 2.
For the sake of the vote, by the way, we did bundle these two together because holy shit, no one cares. Other than Webb. The
difference between the two is really easy to tell, is that the... You know, on the bridge at the back of them, where they've got the balls on top? And
the shield generators.
Yeah, between the balls is a big array. On the Imperial 1, it's huge, and on the Imperial 2, it's much smaller. The simpler way of knowing is that it's an Imperial 1 if it's from A New Hope or previous, and it's an Imperial 2 if it's Empire Strikes Back onwards. It is simply
Was this just a change of model in between movies?
Yes.
Okay.
That's all it is. I never noticed it until it was pointed out to me that they are slightly different.
And it really does. Their Star Destroyer's a Star Destroyer in this case.
Yeah, but the difference between them is actually one of them, the Imperial 1, it's bigger because it's a tractor beam targeting array, and it's just a sensor array on an Imperial 2, apparently.
God.
They've gone that deep into it. The difference was first explained in the Star Wars Rules Companion for the West End Games RPG, because 80% of all unnecessary, over-explained things in Star Wars come from the West End Games RPG. I say that with love.
Okay.
It's also because of, like, it's basically just that the Class 2 is just a later iteration of it.
Yeah.
So it does mean when you see things beforehand, that that will usually be an Imperial Class 1. Hence why the one you see in Rogue One is a Class 1. And
Okay, then.
the ones you see in Rebels are a Class 1. And that's why they have a more prominent, like, array on at the top of the bridge.
And those Class
also,
1s get punked the fuck out in Rogue One. Oh my god, my favourite scene.
It's also why the Zyston classes in Rise of Skywalker have an unreasonably large
sensor array type area.
Sensor array, because they were just reusing the Rogue One model.
Oh, yeah, I remember you telling me about that. It's the Rogue One CG model, yeah.
Even though they're supposed to be 2,406 meters long.
Don't worry about it.
And they didn't scale any windows or anything to be
literally doesn't matter.
But yeah, the reason why they look like Imperial Class 1s is because they were made from the Imperial Class 1 model.
I mean, honestly, the Rogue One model is really nice, so I don't blame them.
But man, did they get a lot of use out of that model.
As they should.
Again, like, speaking as we did with the Venator, so whenever you see a Star Destroyer blow up, do you want to know how many people are dying?
A whole lot of space fascists. How many?
They have about 9,000 officers on board and 27,000 crew.
9,000 officers? What the fuck?
And nearly 10,000 stormtroopers.
Do they just have the stormtroopers in, like, fucking... You know those tiny capsule hotels in Japan? Do they just keep them in those until the time is right?
One can only assume. So yeah, whenever you see a Star Destroyer blow up, that's nearly 50,000 people getting toasted. I mean, they're space fascists, so who cares? But
we can assume the ones that weren't actually space fascists and were just, put into a cruel regime and have no choice, no matter get out, they're fine.
It's all fiction. It's fine now.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it is an outrageous amount of crew. It's something that's always kind of blown my mind when you watch Star Wars and like.
Yeah, I'm trying to work out the reasoning for 9,000 officers. Like, the bureaucracy of that must be fucking staggering.
Maybe it's like Star Trek ship where all the commissioned officers are like it feels like they outnumber the non-commissioned officers like crazy.
Yeah.
But that's just because of the conceit of how it works. In Star Wars, that's actually accurate.
Yeah.
They had about 20... The Empire had about 25,000 Star Destroyers at the height of the Empire as well. So
that's less than I would have thought, but at the same time, that's still a lot of Star Destroyers when you think about it. That's one of those numbers that actually seems reasonable the more I think about it. Huh, weird.
Yeah. Speaking of numbers that get ridiculous, so would you like to know the armament of an Imperial 2 class Star Destroyer?
Oh, god damn it. How many turbo lasers?
60 turbo laser batteries, 60 heavy iron emplacements, 8 octuple turbo laser barbettes, and 10 tractor beam projectors.
Yep.
Now, this is the thing that you will see when you talk about like Star Wars, the big ships especially, is... I say that, we also had this with the TIE Interceptor, but where because of there being numerous different sources to pull this stuff from,
Yep.
there is so much disagreement. Like, an Imperial Class 1 has a slightly different loadout, and you look up, like, the Legends version, that also has a slightly different loadout. But
this is a case of don't worry about it because it's a fantasy setting.
I just wanted to point out how utterly absurd the sheer amount of weaponry that is mounted on a Star Destroyer is. Like, they are just a bristling...
When we're talking about Star Destroyers and shit, it's the Empire's symbol of how huge their dick is.
Yeah. Like,
it is their ultimate sign of strength and, ability to bend the galaxy to its will.
Someone's been reading the Tarkin Doctrine?
Yes. Which is... Tarkin Doctrine's a whole thing. Also, they did orbital bombardments for those things, so the amount of guns doesn't surprise me, it just makes me sad.
Yeah. Would you like to make you less sad, would you like to know some information about the original Star Destroyer model?
Please.
So the original model for the Star Destroyer from A New Hope was 36 inches long, which means that despite it, its entire thing being that it's fucking huge, like, one of the most effective opening scenes in, like, a sci-fi movie...
Yeah.
Being the Star Destroyer endlessly going, like, over the head.
How slow did they move that Star Destroyer to get that shot to work just right? Fucking hell.
But the fun thing is that the actual model of it was about half the size of the real-world model of the Tantive 4.
God damn. Fucking... was that ILM at the time?
Yes, it was.
I didn't know if they had a name yet. Yeah, fucking kudos to them.
And the fun thing there is that, because originally they were going to... Like, Star Destroyers were actually just going to be much smaller ships, and they were going to be chased by, like, 4 of them. And then they were like, no,
they made the right decision on that.
Yeah. I mean, it was a purely budgetary one. They're like, we have enough money to build one big ship, whereas we can't build 4 smaller ships, so...
And it works so much better with one big ship.
It absolutely works. So, talking about people, George Lucas's bad ideas, when seeing how small the Star Destroyer was, Lucas asked them to build a bigger one that was in scale with the Tantive 4, and then ILM said no, because this new camera system that we've developed specifically for this movie means that's completely unnecessary, George. And he was like, okay. Because they just rescale it. It's fine. However, for Empire, they did make a bigger one, thus explaining the Imperial Class 2, which was 102 inches long. The scale that the model makers used was that they intended for it to appear about 2.5 miles long, but obviously official sources then started scaling it down, so it's much smaller than that. But that's what they were originally aiming for.
Okay.
So I do get how the Star Destroyer won, because as I said earlier, my logic for it, saying I think this one will win was purely like, people that like Star Destroyers really like Star Destroyers, and it is a very iconic ship.
Like, the more I think about it, the more it makes sense that it won.
I mean, it's a thing with Star Wars of it opening on a Star Destroyer of some variety.
Yeah, it's not even... Well, yeah, there's that, but, like, thinking even down to me, this is me being an asshole, pretentious son of a bitch for a minute, but in a visual metaphor sense, that first scene in A New Hope where you see the Tantive 4, or the Tantive V4 as I've heard it being called, I don't fucking know, and the Star Destroyer coming overhead, it instantly gives you the idea of the scale of the small group of rebels having to deal with the Empire, this huge, thing that just overshadows them completely.
It tells you.
I'll now take my glasses back off.
It basically tells you everything you need to know about what's happening,
and who the bad guys are, basically.
Yeah, it's a strong scene. I don't think anyone would disagree with that. But yeah, I do like the Star Destroyer. Again, it's like not one that I'd like put in like my top things, but I do completely understand it.
Yeah,
because it is. much like the X-wing, it's such a thing, and the TIE fighter, it's so integral to like
what Star Wars is.
And it's, as shown by the fact that, when they are making other iterations of Star Wars in other time periods, the arrow-shaped ship is just a reoccurring thing that they bring in, and it just being a thing of, hey, it turns out like big star empires just have this weird habit of building these ships that look like this.
Yeah,
there's like a kind of cyclical thing going on with Star Wars' timeline that I find quite fun.
And
yeah, I get it, and so I whilst it would not have been my pick to win for my preference. Obviously, this is the one I thought would, and I totally get it. So yeah, officially, everyone can stop having their own opinions now. It has been decided. The Imperial Star Destroyer is officially the best ship in Star Wars by whatever metric the voters on Twitter decided to go by.
The only argument, not us.
Yeah, the only arguments you're allowed to have now about what the best ship is whether you prefer the Imperial Class 1 or the Imperial Class 2. That's the only argument that's allowed.
And you can leave me the fuck out of that one.
Yeah, and we would take it as a kindness if you never ever tagged us in that argument. But yeah, that is the list. That is us. That is the thing done. Just a little thing I did want to add on the end. Because I sort of brought it up a few times about like, so when we did the Star Trek one, I was able to like go, oh, this ship was sold to a collector in wherever, and and we know, like there's a lot of detail about how these things were built, and you can get into there's a lot of like stuff has been collated online about how these things were made. There's a lot less of that with Star Wars, and not much was saved because a lot of it was just junked afterwards.
Yeah,
because they were just like, why would we keep this? The movie's done. Unfortunately, that even extends into the prequels. They still were doing that to an extent there. So there's a lot of stuff that was made for the prequels that were just binned at the end, which is really sad.
I totally agree.
And also, just for some reason, I know there's books and things out there, but I didn't exactly have the time or like patience or money to go out finding all the books, because a lot of them are like old specific books that contain information about the construction of them. It's just not as widely available as it is for like Star Trek stuff. I don't know if this
is a sign about Star Wars where it's just people care more about the story than they do the behind the scenes a lot of the time. Possibly.
I don't know.
Whereas, I don't know, because when I think about Star Trek, a lot of us are big fans of the kit bash weird shit they came up with. You don't find people not screaming, but talking about the models as much specifically for Star Wars.
Yeah, you don't tend to see it as much. It's not that people don't, but
it's not that it doesn't exist at all. But it's just a thought I had there.
Yeah. Actually, a fun thing to note is that the ships for Star Wars were generally made via their own form of kit bashing, which is quite fun. So what they would do is they would like make the basic structure of a ship, and then they'd crack open. They'd basically just buy model kits in bulk for like planes and like shit, like aircraft carriers, cars, everything, and then just use the little pieces and the sprue to build all the detail on the ships, or
fucking phenomenal
on them. Like I've seen some people go through look at nice glamour shots of the original Millennium Falcon. By the way, the original Millennium Falcon, that doesn't exist anymore. That was destroyed. Just to make you sad. But like they've looked through like the nice glamour shots of it and like gone, okay, so we can tell that little nodule on that bit there, that's like the bridge of this kind of like
from this kit or
World War II destroyer.
Yeah,
this bit here is part of the fuel tank of this kind of British tank. They've gone through like points all of that, which is kind of fascinating. I have seen some photos, like behind the scene photos, like in the model making department for the original movies, and like there's just a wall behind them that is just model kit boxes.
Amazing.
because they just rifled through them. And as a Warhammer player that likes to build,
you feel a bit of a kinship with them.
I feel a kinship with them. I have built many an orc vehicle via the same principles.
That and plastic art.
It is my medium.
Yes.
But yeah, so all that leads up to just not having anywhere near as much detail about that side of things, which is sad, because I would have liked to have had more to say other than just the in-canon stuff. But it is what it is.
On that front, if you do know of a good book or anything like that about it, let us know in the comments.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I know obviously there's visual dictionaries and stuff that show off the props and stuff, but they don't necessarily always show off how they were made.
Yeah.
They're more just
I'd love to see
off.
some production, behind the scenes production stills of them building it and putting them, and painting them and stuff like that.
Yeah. Because that stuff is always fascinating to me. Like, the movies are one thing, but the stuff behind them. It's actually a really fabulous video that was put out recently by what was his name, Captain Disillusion, who did VFX Cool, is a series that they occasionally do, talking about the effects done in movies, and they did one of Flight of the Navigator, and that is,
man, I haven't seen that in a very long time. Holy shit!
And if you're interested in special effects and model work and early CGI, that's a really interesting video. I highly recommend that.
Yeah.
And it's just someone passionately talking about a thing they really care about, which is
funny. I don't know where I've heard that before.
The best kind of content.
Yes, we are the best kind of content. You heard it here first.
Ours is part passionate, talking about things we like, and part passionately complaining about things we love.
Or when it came to, whatever that fucking movie was, the Corman one.
Battle Beyond the Stars.
Yeah, it just became complete resignation of it halfway through.
That movie broke you, didn't it?
Yeah, it did.
Don't
you
worry.
try fucking doing a story run through of that fucking thing.
We'll next time we do a story run through, it'll be something simpler. Don't worry.
And it'll be you,
and it'll be me that does it. But yeah, do you have anything to say about Star Wars ship design before we wrap up?
I've got something to say about Star Wars, I guess, just off the top of my head. In terms of design aesthetic, in terms of story, in terms of themes. It was a very formative thing for me when I was growing up. And what might be seen as sad to some people, but it's still very, very important to me, to the point where if I just go into my desk for a minute, there is a lightsaber right here on my desk. A nice custom-made aluminium body hilt. Because it's something that's always stuck with me.
Yeah. I can't really say anything to you because on the desk currently there's a Micro Machines Jawa Sandcrawler, a Hot Wheels Luke's Landspeeder, and a Grogu figurine.
Good.
Are all on a desk right now.
As it should be.
So I can say nothing.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. Yeah, Star Wars is one of those magical things.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things I actually really find fascinating about Star Wars is how, you will see people who are not into Star Wars, they didn't grow up with it for whatever reason, and then if they get into it, it still starts to affect them in the same way.
Oh, yeah.
There is something that brings out the inner child about
There's a
Star
magic
Wars.
in it. It's the same thing, I think, in the same but different kind of way. The Lord of the Rings movies do the same thing.
Yeah, I can see that.
They were kind of a Star Wars as well, but for a fantasy genre.
For obvious reasons, they're not something that's been able to be milked quite as much as Star Wars, but...
Thank you, Tolkien estate.
But yeah, Star Wars was a big thing for me. I had a fucking Star Wars shrine growing up.
So did I, as a kid. My dad did tell people I was a Star Wars fanatic when I was young.
Like, I had a shelf with all of my memorabilia and, like, my special edition VHSs.
Yep.
My Star Wars Tazos collection. A bunch
Micro
of
Machines playsets.
Micro Machines Action Fleet. I had loads of those.
I very recently got rid of the Micro Machines Death Star.
Yes, I
When I
remember
was
that.
getting out of my room. You pushed the wee lever and the whole thing opened up and it had Tatooine and everything in it.
Yeah. Like Star Wars is just great. It makes me happy. Like one of the there is a special kind of like smile that gets put on my face when I go to the cinema and then sit down and then A Long Time Ago in a Galaxy Far, Far Away comes on screen.
Yeah.
And then the Star Wars logo with the fucking theme tune.
Yep.
And the text crawl. There's just something about that even in the movies that I didn't like very much,
it still has that effect on you.
It still makes me it makes me be 7 years old again.
Yeah.
And I love Star Wars for that. Like, as much as, you know, I might complain about, like, Attack of the Clones or Rise of Skywalker, you know.
The complaints come from a place of love and not a place of pure toxicity.
Like, it's that thing of, like, even when, it's like, oh, well, I didn't like this movie, but, oh, well, I still like Star Wars.
Nothing's going to ruin Star Wars for me.
Yeah, like, at this point, I've watched so much shit, like, it's like, I've fucking, like, I am frustrated, every fucking week, because I just want to see the next episode of The Bad Batch. Like, that show is so good. That show is so fucking good.
It's something that, because of the discourse around Star Wars I always mention in my streams if we're talking about it, I don't focus on the bad things in something that I love.
Yeah.
Like, the new trilogy wasn't the best thing ever in any way whatsoever, but guess what? I still have all this other stuff that I adore.
Yeah, that's the thing.
It's
like,
fine.
If something you don't like comes up, yeah, you can critique it. You can say, you say your piece about it. No one's saying you can't. But, like, just move on. Move on. Go back to the things you like.
You're better off moving on than just sitting there and being bitter about it, because then you just don't move.
And I'm not just saying that to you, listener. I'm saying that to me, like 5 years ago. When I still had, when I was never, like, super bad for it, but, like, I still had those seeds in me until Star Trek Discovery killed my ability to care. And I say that as a positive thing. Thank you, Star Trek Discovery, for making me realise that me being too concerned about lore was wholly unconstructive and made me miss out on fun stories.
Yeah. That's the thing with Star Wars, actually, as well. It's a fucking fairy tale. Don't get wound up in the little minutiae, the moment to moment, little things you can just start poking at and poking holes in. Fuck that, that's not what's important.
It's about the stories.
Honestly, yeah.
And, yeah. And yeah, I think we can just kind of, like, wrap that all up as just Star Wars is good.
Yep.
And it makes us happy. And that is...
I say while holding a lightsaber in my hand, because I don't want to put it down because it'll cause noise.
Oh, fucking hell. So, so earlier today, I can't remember if I mentioned this at the start of the podcast, but I spent like 6 hours watching a show about Bigfoot.
Oh no!
Which was hosted by Dean Cain, which was also very funny.
Why are we doing this?
There's a reason for it.
See, I don't care about this part, so I'll make noise putting my lightsaber down now.
Okay, that's fair. And it was like called something like the $10 million Bigfoot bounty.
Oh, right.
And the point was that they had a group of teams who were going to try and find evidence of Bigfoot, and if a team managed to find evidence of it, they won $10 million, which means no one won $10 million.
Yeah. It's a pretty safe bet and a very cheap show for that reason.
It's on Prime in the UK. If you're interested, it's very
It's a
funny.
fucking reality show as well, right? Like full on, like people get eliminated and shit.
Yeah, honestly, it is. If you've watched RuPaul's Drag Race, it is literally the same format, but with Bigfoot hunting. And
the people that entails.
But why I bring it up is because at one point there was a couple of guys who were very from the internet. In fact, they were in like a forest and were like, oh, it's just like Endor, this way to the shield generator. And you're like, you fucking nerds. In the middle of the forest, they were like, okay, so what we're going to do is we've got a lightsaber here, and they pull out a toy lightsaber and start waving it around, and are like, because the noise and sounds will be unusual, and that might attract a Bigfoot.
Or you're just wanting an excuse to wave around a lightsaber. You can just admit to wanting to play with a lightsaber. It's okay.
And you know, the thing is, because I know enough about this stuff, when they lit it up, I was like, that's an expensive lightsaber you've got there, friend.
Oh, it'll be one of the ones like I've got, and it'll be the Hasbro Force Effects ones, or whatever they call them, the Black Series, maybe.
Yeah, it wasn't like a toy one. You could like see, no, that cowling, that's made of metal. Like, yeah, that's a nice one. It was like, so yeah, they got out and did that. However, there is one thing that I think is missing from this podcast, which is that I haven't read any joke from the Star Wars joke book that my dad bought me.
Bitch.
So,
brace yourselves, everyone.
Longfang. Why do Wampas eat raw meat?
I don't know. Why do Wampas eat raw meat?
Because they're terrible at cooking. Longfang. Longfang. He's terrible at cooking.